Hockey World. It's Tuesday, January 31st, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And that's Dan Petru on the phone with us. All right.
Yes, live from the Cross Bronx Expressway.
Can't think of a better place to be.
I can.
Yeah, maybe a few, right? So we had to have Dan on today because the Islanders news is blowing up. Obviously, last night, Bloomberg report comes out stating that they're not going to bring the Islanders back, and I think we should just go right to Dan and see what you've heard and what's going on.
Well, what really this reminds me of 18-year-old Dan Petru. Okay, what yesterday reminds me of is 18-year-old me. I'm out with my girlfriend at the time. We're having dinner. We're having pizza at this little pizza place in Blancheville, Connecticut. And she looks at me and she's like, "You know what? You're a really nice person." And I looked at her and I said, "I think we should break up." Basically, what Barclays did yesterday was they know the end was coming. They know that Ledecky and Malkin are looking at other options, and they decided to get in front of it.
I think it's more than that, Dan. I mean, I think we've been looking at this situation for a couple of years. The attendance is bad. They do want to make more money as far as the owners of the building. I don't think this is a great shock.
It's not a shock at all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I was expecting the news to come out from Malkin and Ledecky first, and I think Barclays wanted to get the jump on it, maybe to negotiating tactic. But this isn't a surprise to anyone. It just doesn't work there. The obstructive, it's not built for hockey. You don't have an NHL quality ice, and the obstructive you see, it's just the problem. So where do you go from here is the issue. City Field, I still don't think that's an option. They've talked about developing that land for almost 20 years now, and if you have to involve the city of New York, things don't get done quickly. I still think the number one target is Belmont State Park or Belmont Racetrack, because that is owned by the state. You don't have to go through the city. They really, really, really want to develop that land. The Cosmos were going to go in there, but they folded. They want to put an arena in there. They want to bump up the race park. They want it to be a 24/7, 365-a-year destination. There's talks of casinos going in there. That, to me, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen there.
All right, so let's give some people who don't understand New York geography very well what the differences are here. So the city park, if I understand it right, is Queens, right?
That's right. Yep. Okay,
that's Queens, and that's like the Science Museum, all that stuff over there by.
Yeah, that's about 15, 20 minutes from the Coliseum heading towards the city.
It's where they play the U.S. Open, correct?
Yes, that's right where they play the U.S. Open.
Yeah, just beyond Citi Field, there's a bunch of chop shops. They would clear those, and that would be the land.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So so that's interesting. So that like I've said before, that when I was talking to people yesterday, they were bringing up Queens as well, and they've been bringing up Queens, like you said, forever. I mean, I can tell you that in 2010, I was on an airplane going out to Vancouver for the Olympics, and I left out of LaGuardia. Or no, I left out JFK. Sorry, I left out JFK, and I was on with a bunch of Islanders people, and the people on there all told me, they were people who worked for Charles Wang at the time, and everything, and said that that was where they were going to end up. They said it's just always been known. It's just a matter of how they get there. That's 2010. So,
well, I will tell you this: what's changed from 2010 to now, I believe, shortly after that is when Bloomberg actually gave that land for free to the Wilpons to do whatever they wanted with it in hopes that they would develop it.
Wait a second. Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Bloomberg.
Yes.
So Bloomberg owns this land.
Yes. Used to.
All right.
The mayor, former mayor, at the media.
No,
so those guys aren't connected at all, right?
Right, not connected.
Okay, I just want to make sure about that.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, the mayor gave them the land.
Okay, they gave them land, which, all right, so that has changed since 2010. So now
I believe so, yeah.
But you're still saying the city has to get. So the city has to.
Well, the city has to get involved like they did with Citi Field, but they have been able to get things done. I think there's a better than 40% chance they can get it done. I think what he's talking about has a real good chance too. But you know what the funny thing is? The Coliseum now is an interesting matter again, because if they add the extra seats, now the smallest arena is the MTS. It has just over 16,000. there is an NHL standard of around 16,000. Gary Bettman sort of gets bristly with anything smaller.
Yeah.
If they could add if they make that arena right around 16,000, just over 16,000, Bettman would sign off on it in a heartbeat. Now, you do have to deal with the corrupt Long Island government.
That's been a problem before.
That's been a problem.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. I survived the Lighthouse Project and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So
I just find it hard to believe that Ledecky and Malkin would pay New York City prices to buy the team and then move it back to the suburbs. You know what I mean?
Yes and no. I mean, okay, let's talk for Islanders fans for a second, right? Now you're a Connecticut guy, right?
I'm pretty much. I'm a Long Islander now.
You're a Long Islander now. Okay, so for Islanders fans,
Connecticut in my heart. Connecticut in my heart, Long Island in my zip code.
Okay, right. So, all right, there you go. So, Islanders fans have always wanted this on Long Island. Like this, this moving this to Brooklyn was a okay move for them. But Islanders fans I talked to, the reason the attendance is what it is because it's just not where Islanders fans are going to go. It's the equivalent of heading into the city for a lot of suburban people. Am I right about that?
Yeah, yes and no. I think that's misguided. I think we wax poetic on the Coliseum. I think. We in our heads was this wonderful place. No, at the end of the day, it was a dump. It was our dump, but it was a dump. And people forget that the year after they made the playoffs, they lost that thrilling series to the Penguins. But the year after that, the second, third, fourth home games of the season, there were 10,000 fans there on weeknights. So that's a little misleading as well, too. I mean, yes, we all wax poetic about the Coliseum. And I do think, I feel like, look, if it's an option, maybe it's a temporary option, I don't know. Belmont is in Nassau County. It's the westernmost part of Nassau County, and it butts up against Queens. So, I think Malkin and Ledecky, they talked a big game. I do believe they are committed to the Islanders and the Islander fans. So let's see what they come up with, because not only do they need an arena, they need to be able to make money, too.
Right. They need to be able to make money.
Here's the weird thing, Ek. Every 5 to 10 years, this becomes a shell game with the Islanders. And now to sort of add into it, John Tavares has already said, hey, I'm willing to listen to offers. And they don't even have an arena. They don't even have a GM. Like we know that it's going to be a different GM and everything is in flux. It bothers me. But the other thing that bothered me about Brooklyn was like for people like my dad who was used to travel into the city for 30 years, to add an extra half hour onto somebody's commute, then to come out of a game, 10 o'clock at night and then go home is a lot to ask. On the island, they were at least able to leave work a little early, get home, get their family, go to the game, and then they could be home and they don't have to be commuting anymore. Adding to that commute hurt their attendance.
Oh, no question.
Absolutely.
And even more so in this day and age, I think, than your dad's day and age. I mean, I think that people now, they're not there's enough entertainment in the world that they don't have to go, they don't have to drive into the city. And this is why, teams in this era that have built stadiums in the wrong places, that think that this is 20 years ago. It's not, it's just not. And the fact of the matter is, the turn of the century came a ton of other entertainment options. So it's a big deal to drive out there. And it became a big, you can watch these games in so many different ways too. So it's completely, that being said, I've flat out, and I've told Dan this and I've told everybody this, that, Islanders fans are among the most passionate in the league. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most, rabid fan bases. They are absolutely, because and there's a good reason for that. I mean, when most of the Islanders fans now were kids, that team was crazy good. Right. And that plays into the fact that they've, maintained being fans, right? So this is a crazy situation. I did talk to the NHL, because immediately I people were sending me, oh, Quebec, they're going to go to Quebec. And the NHL has a couple things about that, and the one thing I've said before, which is really funny because people laugh at it, but it's honest, and I would laugh at it too, but if I hadn't heard it so many times from people that really matter, is that the NHL just does not want to move a team that's won a Stanley Cup. They really have this thing about that. They have this, and I know we can sit there and shake your head, but there is a real reality to that at the league, and this is a team that won 4 Stanley Cups, okay? So this is a team that completely, because the NHL's belief has always been, especially in the United States, if a team won a Stanley Cup, that makes a huge difference in the community, and that team is cemented. And it might take a generation for that to take hold, but it is cemented.
But Eck, the league is going to give you this answer about Carolina, about the Islanders, about every team that's in trouble. Most of the teams in trouble have won a Stanley Cup too, but guess what? When things are bad, when people want to make money, when people have to sell, the league can only control so much. Something is going to happen with one of these franchises, if not two of them, a lot quicker than what they're reporting to you and to everybody else.
I mean, thank God the Cleveland Barons didn't win a Stanley Cup, for crying out loud.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I know Dan has got to go in a few minutes, but I don't think there's a great movement to get the Islanders out of New York. They have part of the landscape. There is the rivalry there with the Rangers and to a lesser extent with the Devils. I think they're going to find a way. I still think Carolina is the team, even though they won a cup in 2006. I still think that that's the team that eventually, because Carmano said in the last few days that he's probably going to sell the entire team and not just a part of it. That's the team that's going to end up in Quebec City, because all the people that were at that building yesterday for the top prospects game were oohing and eyeing about the quality of that building. The NHL is going to find a way to get in that building.
They're going to that building. They are. I think it's a 32nd team. No, I don't think it's a team that's moving.
I don't know about that. I sort of disagree, but it doesn't matter. Getting back to the Islanders, here's the thing. I went to that last Islander Ranger game, and the passion was great. It's still, when things are right, one of the best environments. Now, was it like 55-45 Rangers fans? Yes, but also Islander fans knew the team was leaving, and that does affect attendance. I think you could spark it back up. I think they didn't do a good job in Brooklyn reaching out into schools and everything the first year. They waited to sort of like the second year. It was a little late on that. I think they could do it right on the island again, but they have to basically, they're looking for a rental right now. Like, if nothing else, they need a place for 2 to 3 years.
Well, part of the problem in Brooklyn was they gave, Wong gave up control of the team to the Barclays Center. That includes the marketing. That includes their public relations. That includes everything. And I know for a fact that Malkin and Ledecky want that control back.
Yeah.
They want to be in charge of what they do. They want to be in charge of their brand. And I think at the end of the day, what might save the Islanders is not a building. It's their TV contract with MSG, because it's somewhere between $32 to $35 million a year, and not many teams can say that.
No, it's one of the craziest, if not the craziest, television contract in the history of television contracts. It really is.
Absolutely.
No, and that's a huge deal. And to finish off my thought, I mean, Carolina did win one Stanley Cup, and it was sort of an outlying Stanley Cup. I'm not saying that if there's a team I'm just saying the Islanders moving, I don't think is going to happen. And there are people who have been. I don't see it happening. I don't think Dan's going to have to go through this again and have one of his teams move away.
I don't know what would happen. Like, seriously, I don't know what would happen if they move, and this is the second franchise that moves on me. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, Dan grew up a Harvard Whalers fan.
I would feel bad for Dan. I mean, that's really a tough thing to go through. I've never even gone through it once, other than a team just leaving. Like the New York Nets just evaporated, and that's fine. But here's what I would say. If I were the Islanders owners right now, I would strike at least a tentative deal with the Coliseum. I don't see that there's many options here.
That's what they're going to have to do.
They have to do this. Otherwise, then they might be playing in Kansas City for 2 to 3 years or some other place, renting a building, which would be bad. MSG is not going to rent out to the Islanders. For people that think that that's going to happen, it's not. And I don't think the Islanders or the Prudential Center are going to want to play there either. I don't think they're going to do that either.
And what's the capacity of the Coliseum now with the refurb?
We don't know.
Oh, we don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
You hear all different kind of numbers. They said they can get it to 16. I don't really buy that. I don't buy anything that comes out of a Long Island politician's mouth.
I agree.
I agree. What's the deal with Bridgeport, Dan? What's that stadium like?
Bridgeport is around 9.
Right.
I think it's around 9. It's absolutely beautiful. It's one of the nicer minor league arenas around, and every time they have college games there, they have they've had NCAA tournament there.
Yeah.
And it's always packed. It's it's an outstanding minor league. It's an awesome minor league venue. It's actually pretty easy to get. It's probably easier for Islander fans on the North Shore and in Suffolk County to get to Bridgeport and take the ferry than it is going to Brooklyn.
Is the Hartford Civic Center still there? Is the mall still there?
That place is a dump.
It's a dump.
You could look. You could build a brand new arena in Hartford made out of gold and diamonds, and the NHL still wouldn't go there.
No, I don't think the perfect scenario for you, Dan, of the Islanders moving to Hartford is going to happen.
I think if they
Hartford is a minor league city. It cannot support a major league franchise. The businesses aren't there.
Right.
If you ever went back to Connecticut, it would have to be in Fairfield County and Stamford. That's where all the money is.
Right.
Maybe if they put a big screen in Bridgeport to the outside, they could count the boating traffic as attendance.
Well, I think that I heard yesterday when I was talking to people about a solution that would have them playing 80% of their games on Long Island and 20% of the games in Bridgeport, which is why I bring this up. Just in a temporary solution while they're trying to figure out what to do here. You could end up seeing some of that happen. I don't know.
I don't think the league would approve that. I really don't.
I don't think they would either.
Something that they were discussing. So it was the league that I was talking to.
I'm sure they're discussing it, but I think
they don't have a whole lot of time. And they have one more year still, right? They have another year next year. In there, and then who knows? I guess, and there's no saying that they're suddenly going to things are going to be fixed. I don't think things are going to be fixed in Brooklyn and all. So I think that this is.
But if Malkin and Ledecky have to get out in front of this, they cannot let these fans just dangle in the wind like they have so many times.
Yeah.
Within the next week or two, they need to come out, have a press conference, and say, "Here's what we're doing," even if it's just temporary.
Yeah. There's no reason not to go
Actually,
back.
if I were in ownership, this would be my action plan. Sign John Tavares, then do the public, this is what we're going to do with the team, and then get that other replacement in there for Garth, push Garth upstairs, and get all of this settled before June, because if they don't, it's going to start getting scary.
They can't sign Tavares before July 1st.
Well, that's true, but they can at least tell people that we're at least negotiating with them and get it done.
Yeah, I mean they are. I mean, I don't think that they're. Yeah, I mean they can't even negotiate with them, right? So
right, they can't.
I mean,
they can't start talking until July 1st.
Okay.
I mean, Tavares has come out and said that he'll stay. I think that, and he wants to stay. He wants to make sure this works.
End of the sentence on that one is, "I'll stay if you pay me what Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane are making."
Right.
Which I think.
I don't know.
No.
I think he gets what Stamkos gets.
No, no way. Got to remember, Stamkos took 8.5 because of the no state tax in Florida. The equivalent of that in Toronto or Buffalo or Detroit was over $10 million. So he's getting his money because of the state tax.
I think. I do think Tavares.
I think John wants to live next to Brad Richards in the Hamptons, and you don't get that with Stamkos money. You need a little more.
Yeah,
I think you can do that with Stamkos money.
Let's just say I'd like to find out. Okay.
Sure, you can do that with Stamkos. Yeah, you can. If you're making $8 million a year, you can live in the Hamptons. Yes, you're all right there. I mean, I know it's expensive, but it's not that expensive. Yeah. So. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, the Islanders. Before I let you go, Dan, real quick, the rumor today as well. Another Jordan Eberle for Hamonic rumor that I was hearing this morning.
Yeah, we've heard that one for a while now, and it looks like it's resurfacing. And
yep.
Obviously, if I'm moving Hamonic, I think I'd rather have one of the Avalanche forwards than Jordan Eberle.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Matter of the Avalanche forwards, I don't think are going to, Hamonic, the prices on the Avalanche forwards, at least right now, are ridiculous. So the prices on Eberle is, Eberle can be gotten for Hamonic. And you can sit there and you say, okay, Hall for Larson, Eberle for Hamonic. I mean, I don't know. You definitely think that, it makes more sense that Eberle would have gone for Larson and Hamonic would have gone for Hall. But,
right.
But, at the end of the day, it's really a matter of who wants to play with you here. And I think, the Oilers are willing to play right now. I don't think Colorado is. Not without totally taking the Islanders, for lunch. I think this is going to be.
I still think the whole Colorado thing is, does Colorado ownership trust Joe Sakic to make that move? And I think that's a 50-50 proposition. So I think that's why they might wait until the summer, because maybe a new GM is going to be the one making those moves.
That's a good point, Mike. I've heard the same thing too. I've heard there's a lot of internal rumblings in Colorado.
I mean,
oh yeah, that's for.
I mean, maybe they move Sakic up to team president, but they'll let unlike situations like Toronto and other teams where the president is the one who makes all the decisions. Maybe Sakic is more of a figurehead as a team president, and the GM there would be the one to actually make the moves. And I think that's a possibility, but we won't know. We'll know before March the 1st if one of them gets moved. Like I said, I think it's unlikely.
Yeah.
Boys, I gotta get going.
Thank you, Dan.
See you, Dan.
I'll talk to you soon.
Drive safe. Dan Petru from the highway there.
So I will tell you that as of today, and I'm not a big fan of when they have these percentages, the Islanders have a 35% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
No, I know percentage. I know that's what they are. It's I want to talk percentages. The crazy thing, I was reading the Tampa paper. I forget who it was, Tampa writer, who says that it looks like Lightning on the playoffs. He comes out and says, "Yeah, Lightning have a very little chance of making the playoffs." I don't think that's reality either, because I think they're going to do something big to try and really get hot down the stretch, and they have the assets to do it. They have the money to spend, so I think they'll do it. I do. Yeah, I agree with that one. I'm going to have to leave you guys for 1 second. I have a contract issue here that's making me insane. I'll be right back.
We'll talk about Alain Vigneau's contract.
Yes.
So it came out yesterday, Russ. Alain Vigneau signs a 2-year extension. His contract was going to be up after next year.
Yes.
So now he's extended 2 more years, so through the 2020 season, and he's been given a boost in pay up to $2 million, which, if you think about it, he's been to a Stanley Cup final twice, making $2 million, and if you can get it, God bless. But Mike Babcock is making 3 times what he's making, and he's been to 3 Stanley Cup finals, and has only won 1 of them, lost 2. I mean, I'm not
1-1.
I'm not ripping. Babcock took advantage of the fact he was a free agent and the fact that the Leafs have the deepest pocketbook in the league. He got the money, and he's doing a great job in Toronto. But just to look at the disparity between him and other coaches' salaries, there was a scenario there where everybody thought, okay, well, Babcock's going to get that big money. It's going to raise all the boats. Doesn't seem to be raising all the boats.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it sort of was almost a miracle when Anaheim made it, and Babcock really got on the board for everybody. And so I think that's where he's thought about it in a little more reverence. I mean, look, Detroit had stacked teams. Eventually the Leafs will too. So I think it's the job he did in Anaheim is what got him there. Now, Vigneau has certainly had enough players. He's gotten there the one time. They had a reasonable chance of winning, but nothing more than that.
Yep.
And now I think they're more on the decline than they are on the rise. And I just think this is a move by the Rangers to not have to go look for a coach. Like, I was
going to say, is this a reward move? You've done great here, so here's your golden parachute if in a year and a half we have to fire you.
I mean, it's possible. It's possible because, there's a lot of money in MSG, so that could happen. I don't see the sense in the 2-year extension. I just don't. I would have given him a 1-year extension now, so he wouldn't be a lame duck next year. See where he is next year, because next year, to me, if things didn't improve a lot, that might be the year he could get fired.
Well, yeah, you also have to remember there is no salary cap for management, scouting, and coaches.
Right.
So this is just, I mean, MSG and Dolan have billions, so $2 million for a couple-year extension is nothing. Is not even that's what they pay for paper clips.
Right. It's just it's just one of these things where I kind of wonder if internally they feel like if they reward him, there'll be a better result from the team. Like, did the team really think he was leaving this quick? I don't think so. Is the team really going to play any better now that he's locked up for 2 more years? I don't think so. So it has to be a reward, because otherwise it doesn't make sense, other than, hey, they don't want to have to go looking for a coach right now.
Yeah, and
that's what it tells me.
Right, and if you look, I mean, right now, most of the prominent coaches are locked up on, you're always going to have young coaches who people are like, okay, he's the next hot thing, and that's going to be the guy that everybody's going to be after. But the established coaches, with the exception of Hitchcock, who's up after this year, Carlisle's locked up on a long term in Anaheim. Daryl Sutter's probably, LA is going to be his last job. Babcock is locked up long term for Toronto. I mean, there's 3 or 4 others, Quenneville.
I'll give you 3 names. I'll give you 3 names that I think if they replaced either one of these guys, nobody would say a word, because I think they have a good body of work. First one would be John Stevens. I know we all say, well, he's going to get this job from Sutter. Well, he hasn't yet. And the Rangers could offer him a lot of money, and he does actually have a lot of ties here in New Jersey. It would make sense. So John Stevens would be one. I still could see Gerard Gallant getting a look. That wouldn't be impossible. And the fact that he does work well with young players would bode well, because this team is eventually getting younger rather than getting older. And so I think you've got Gallant, you've got Stevens, and I think if Claude Julien were to open up this summer, you would have to consider him going to MSG.
I'll give you one more, and
so I think he would be another name.
I'll give you one more, and he may not be in trouble this year, but if his team struggles again next year, then he might be in trouble, because they may just need a change, and that's John Cooper. I mean, if Tampa falters and doesn't make the playoffs this year, then the excuse is without Stamkos. But if Stamkos comes back and they have the same problems that they had this year, then it might be that they're tuning him out, or they just need a change. And he, as a coach on the market, teams will bend over backwards to get him.
Sure, but I don't think he'll get on the market. I think he's safe for 2 to 3 more years. I really do. I think they're a patient market there. I spoke to Dave Anderchuk a couple of weeks ago. I haven't put that article out yet about how they feel about the team and the team in the city. And so I don't think he's in trouble. But like I said, if Julien were to come on the market, I don't even care if Vigneau's got an extension or not. If the Rangers had a disappointing year, if they got bounced in the first round, you'd have to do your due diligence if you're Jeff Gordon and talk to him. He knows him. He was in the Boston organization. It would make sense. And John Stevens is another one. At some point, someone's going to pry him away. He's not going to wait forever for the Kings job.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it was a good move. I think that 2 years. I think 2 years, $2 million sounds about right to me. It feels right to me. I don't know.
What do you do, Eck? I was just saying. Tell me what it is. Other than a reward, do the players feel like they're more stable now because he has an extension? I don't think so. Do they feel like they're going to play harder now because they know he's going to be there? I don't think so. They have a group that plays pretty hard already. Like, what changes the team dynamic by giving him that money?
I think it's just a reward for doing something. I think for doing more with this group of players than people thought they could do. Like I think that this is a team that was, when you looked at it in the preseason, there were people that were high on them, but they have been at times fantastic this year. I mean, and he's gotten a lot out of these guys. I am not a Vigneau guy. Like, that's not one of my favorite coaches on the planet, but I
think he handles himself great. I think he's great for the organization as a mouthpiece. I think he's classy. I think he's the exact opposite of John Tortorella. So in that regard, yeah. I think he's been masterful. I just think he's on the decline with this team. I see the same things wrong with this team that I saw wrong with the Vancouver Canucks when things were going bad.
You think there was any fear that he may get courted by like Vegas or something like that?
No, I think there's a possibility of that. And I think, they basically, like I had said to Mike, I think they paid him so they didn't have to look for a coach right away.
Yeah. And right.
That's not a good thing. I mean, I don't care. What is he, 4th or 5th in wins? I don't care about numbers like that. I can come up with Terry Collins for the Mets. He's getting up there with wins too. He hasn't won anything either. This is New York. At some point, if you don't win, and just making it once, to me, isn't enough to have a long-term job. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, getting to the Stanley Cup was great, right? And Ranger fans are very happy about it. But they got there once.
And they got to a conference final the other time, right? And then and last year they ran up against a buzzsaw, in Pittsburgh. So that's
what do you think? What do you think is going to happen again this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh is where they were last year, so I think.
Okay, I mean, you could say that. I mean, look, we'll talk about it weeks from down the road, but there's only a couple teams I think they can beat, and they're probably looking for the crossover to the Atlantic to make that happen. In the Metro, I think the only team they could beat in the Metro is the Flyers, and they'd have to actually make the playoffs too.
Right. That's possible. I mean, yeah, I think that's selling them a little bit short. I think they could battle with anybody in the
I mean, they'll battle with Columbus. I think they could beat Columbus, but that would be tight. I think they would lose to Pittsburgh. I know they would lose to the Capitals.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, I mean it's true. I mean, I don't think that if you're going to get rid of him or move him out, you need another option, and I just don't think that exists unless, like you said, and you're right. And if it does exist, like Julian, if he becomes available, they won't care about an extension. They won't.
Right. No.
So really, I mean, this is New York. This is not going to be.
Right.
I mean, the extension there doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of, except for the fact that you save him from being able to talk to Vegas or talk to somebody else.
That's true.
At the end of the day, so there, I think, and he hasn't been terrible. He's obviously gotten to a final. He
hasn't been terrible, but like it's just one of these things. You have a generational goaltender there.
Yeah.
And you haven't won a Stanley Cup. I don't blame Lundqvist for not winning the Cup. There's a lot of other factors that go into it. But at the end of the day, he's been there for a chunk of it, and so is Tortorella. And there's still the ultimate result has not happened.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to disagree there.
That's the reality.
Yeah. Let's move on to some trade rumors here that we've got going on.
And then we have to do the top 100.
And we can get to the top 100. Yeah. We can start. Actually, we can start with that. Why don't we start?
Okay.
Because I might. You guys go first today, and we'll see what happens here. So
okay.
Let's start with this. Start with your picks on this one.
With me or Mike? I didn't hear.
Good. Mike, you start.
Well, I mean, I think Russ and I both have this guy on our not pick list, and I think you do too, Eck. Mm-hmm. So I'll immediately take the Duncan Keith off of there. But I'll go different than what I think Russ is going to pick. I was surprised that Zdeno Chara was not on the list.
Me too. I had Chara in for Keith as well. I do.
Yeah, I mean, so it was either Chara. I know, Eck, you said Weber.
Yeah.
There were three defensemen currently playing that I think would have been better choices than Keith. One was Weber, the other was Chara, and the last one was Doughty. And it's nothing against Duncan Keith. I just think that you've satisfied your quotient with Kane and Taves, and taking a defenseman off of that team as well. I mean, because there were certain limitations. They took they took 2 or 3 or 4 players from dynasty teams, like the Islanders. They took Billy Smith, Trache, Bossy, and Potvin. That was it. They gave 3 players to the Blackhawks. They've won 3 Stanley Cups. I think that's a little much. I have no problem with Kane or Taves, but Keith was the one that I thought was borderline. So I would say Chara.
Yeah, I just didn't want Ty to troll me on Twitter. That's why I picked Chara.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to go there, right? It's a tough one. I mean, Chara is you can make a really good case for Chara over Keith. To me, you have to argue with Chara and Weber if you're gonna, and not to say both of them couldn't be on there too. I mean,
here's how. This is the unfair part about the top 100. I think with Weber, right? Weber hasn't won a cup. Let's just take him out of it for 1 second, okay? Do the Bruins win a cup without Chara? There's no way.
Right.
There's no possible way. Could the Blackhawks have won without Keith? There's a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could. I mean, and I'll tell you, I mean, a couple things that to me, I've talked to players and I wrote this in my article that that say Keith is somebody that they don't mind going up against in his own zone. That they know he's great when he's in the offensive zone. Obviously, he skates like the wind. I remember when Keith first came in. It was funny. I was at I happened to go out to just do a story on the Blackhawks when the Blackhawks were at their lowest point possible. Like I went, they were.
Wait, was Kyle Calder still on the team?
They were about to fire Savard, right? That's where they were. That's what was happening. It was at that point, and they were definitely. Things were changing quickly, and before you knew it, you really had there was nothing going on there. And I remember Keith was at that point. Keith was on the ice. What's going on with my computer? Sorry.
God. Mute it.
Trying to.
This was the Mark Bell era, probably, Russ.
I thought Kyle Calder. Okay.
Hold on. I'm so sorry about this. Why? All right, I think we're good. All right.
You're watching Policewoman or something.
No.
Did Jadnov get traded yet?
That's crazy. So, all right. So, I was at this practice, right, and I was at this morning skate, and this is right when one of the coaches got fired and Savard got hired. I forget who the coach was that was before him. So anyway, I'm at this thing, and it was bad. I mean, the Hawks were terrible, and they were really playing. And Duncan Keith was a scratch, like a healthy scratch. He was a young kid still, but he was a healthy scratch, and they kept saying, yeah, they think he's terrible in his own zone. And I was watching him play in the morning skate. I'm like, wow, that guy can fly. You know, like he was obviously like Paul Coffey fast. Like I'm like, this is insane. But you know, they said, yeah, he can fly, but that's all he's got. You know, it's all he's got going on. And not to say he hasn't gotten himself together since then, which he obviously has. And he's a great player, which he obviously is. But I still think that, you know, people will tell you that if you can throw the puck in on them and get him to turn his back, he'll throw the puck around the boards pretty blindly and, you know, be able to pick up some stuff. So,
you know what was interesting about the Savard era? I was getting on Savard for the lack of playing time for Brent Seabrook, because for some reason Seabrook wasn't getting regular time, and it was coming off the World Juniors. Like I got to know Seabrook really well. I saw the kind of player he was. I expected him to be a really good NHLer, and I remember fans were not thrilled with Seabrook at the beginning because he wasn't playing with the right guys or enough time, and that was on Savard. It was.
Yeah.
Trent Yawney was the coach before.
He was there, yes, and I was there for his last press conference. Yeah, it was a really weird time to go, and you know, but it just is what happened. So, okay, well, there's one. Mike, you give me one, then I'll give one. I mean, Russ, you give me one, and then.
So, you know, I still have Bill Cook. He was, you know, again, when everybody talked about Rocket Richard, he was the Rocket Richard of his era. Frank Boucher, a teammate of his, said he thought he was better than Rocket Richard and Gordie Howe. I don't know if that's true, but he had 33 goals in 41 games one year. He would get 20 or 30 goals every year. He was the first Ranger to win the Stanley Cup. He was their first All-Star. He was pretty much everything to that franchise. And the Rangers, after speaking to Emil Francis, Cook was everything to that franchise. And the Rangers were a top team for like the first 8 years of the league. He's not in there. He should be in there. I would take Sid Abel out as being just the third part of that great line.
Okay, look, and there's a good. I took Sid Abel out as well, because, like you said, I mean, he was only part of that production line for I think 3 years. So most of his career was during the war and after the war, when a lot of players had gone over to Europe. So I thought, not to say that those years don't count, but I look at them less. Even baseball looks at them less because guys like Ted Williams and DiMaggio weren't there. Yeah. So Sid Abel was the one I took off, and Lanny McDonald, a 500 goal scorer, a guy who won a Stanley Cup and is, you know, I mean, a great forward for, you know, almost 20 years. You know, I just cannot fathom how he was not on this list.
Yeah, he's in the Mustache Hall of Fame, like, you know.
Yeah. No, there's a couple of really good ones. I mean, mine that, you know, this really goes back, but I read Kevin Allen wrote this and I agreed with it. I mean, besides Malkin, who was the obvious one everybody talked about, right? But and I can see Ryan Malkin's not on there. Okay, and I honestly can, and that's no slight on him at all, because I think he's one that he just hasn't.
If he was in a different market, he would be on there. You know that.
Yeah, I do think that's true. And also, you know, I think he's been overshadowed by Ovechkin his entire career. I think the fact is, you know,
I think both things have hurt him. Yep.
Russian after Ovechkin, right? But that doesn't mean he's not like this one of the top 5 players in the world. And I think that, you know, I would put Malkin on there too. I don't know who I would take. I do know who I would take off. Let me start with Malkin. I would take off Luc Robitaille.
Wow.
And people going to rip me about that, but I honestly feel like, you know, just based on, and Luc Robitaille was an incredible scorer and again, like a legendary player and a part. I mean,
Ranger fans are agreeing with you. He only scored like 20 goals for the Rangers.
Oh, I know, and he was a great king, and I'm going to get torn apart about this, I know, but I think that Malkin's a better player than Luc Robitaille was. And I just think at the end of the day, if both were in their prime, I would take Malkin.
Okay.
You know that, and
I can't say no.
You know, and it's a tough one, you know, and but Mike, give me another one.
Well, okay, because I had Malkin on my list as well, but I did it a little different because I had more than 5 players that I thought.
You're only allowed 5, Mike. That's filibustering.
Well, okay, but okay, what I'm let me finish, please.
Yeah.
There were 2 guys who fit into the same category that I would remove, not because they weren't great players, but I think it's their resume of how many Stanley Cups they won, but they were never the best player on their teams, and that's Bob Gainey and Serge Savard. I understand they won tons of cups in the 70s, but I'm sorry, I just don't think that in and of itself is enough of a qualification. Now, I went on the tangent here of the unappreciated Russian. One was Malkin, and you're right, Ovechkin was overshadowing him, so I think that's the reason why. The other one was Alexander Mogilny. He was completely overshadowed by Bure and by Fedorov, and I think Mogilny was as good as Pavel Bure. I mean, he was more durable than Pavel Bure.
He was more durable. Bure was a better goal scorer for his career. Mogilny had that one amazing year.
Yes, his 93 with that 76 goals.
That's a tough call. I think as an overall hockey player, I think you're right about Mogilny being better, but I think Bure was just a better scorer no matter what. No matter what you did, he was.
He was more flashy. He was definitely more.
It wasn't even flashy. Like, if you were going to tell me I get one shift to put guys out on the ice, I need a goal, and I could choose between Bure and Mogilny, I'm putting Bure.
But in the second half of his career, I mean, Bure, after Vancouver, he was a shadow of his former self with Florida, and who's with the Rangers for
with the Rangers, I'm telling you, he
was pretty good.
He was unbelievable. I covered the whole time with him as a Ranger, and he had something like 12 goals in 8 games or something crazy like that, and then his knee went out again, and it was over.
And Mogilny, arguably, other than that 76-goal year, was better in the second half of his career with New Jersey, with Vancouver, with Toronto than he was at points with the Sabres. So I think his career is more even, and he had over 1,000 points. He had a Stanley Cup victory. So I mean, I think Mogilny deserved to be in.
Okay,
it's a tough one. Go ahead, you give another one, Russ.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Frank Boucher again. I want to say 8-time Lady Byng winner. When the Lady Byng was, really in high regard. Now we sort of make fun of it and stuff, but back then it was a big deal. And I'll tell you, and you go look at his seasons. I mean, he was a great player. He won multiple Stanley Cups. He was part of the great Ranger line. I'm going to take off Henri Richard because I don't care that he was on the most cup teams. I looked at him and I always thought he was a very good player. He was, this is a guy who never even scored more than 30 goals. 30 goals was his top goal scoring year. He's 1,046 points in 1,256 games. Like, he's not even close to a point a game.
Right.
He had a great brother. He had a great team. He was a good leader. It's not enough for me.
Yeah, the Montreal fan base is not going to be happy with either one of us, Russ, because I'm taking off Gainey and Serge Savard. You're taking off him. So, okay, here are two centers from slightly different eras. There was a little bit of an overlap here that I didn't think belonged on this list. One was Adam Oates. The other was Denny Savard. Adam Oates was on there simply. He is a great playmaker, and he played with one of the greatest scorers of all time in Brett Hull. And then he played for the Bruins and played with I think it was with Neely for a little bit. But that's all he was an assist guy. I mean, I even in the latter part of his career, I never thought that there was anything. He was not to me. He was not a two-way guy. He was just a very good playmaker and assist guy, and he compiled a ton of points. Savard,
he was a little soft too. We all know Adam Oates was a little soft.
And Savard, if you look at the early and mid 1980s, and everybody was ranking who the number one centers were in the league, and you talked about the Western Conference, Savard was always third behind Gretzky and behind Dale Hawerchuk. He was never first.
That's
never.
True.
So and he won his one cup in Montreal as a declining player with the Canadiens in '93. I think both of those do not have the resume of Doug Gilmour. Not a chance.
I agree. Gilmour's on my list. Gilmour's on my list, and I would take Sundin off. I thought about that long and hard.
Well,
and I think we all thought of Sundin with more reverence because he was a bigger guy and he was. But I did look at it again, and I agree with that.
I think Sundin made it, Russ, simply because he's the leading point getter in Maple Leafs history. I think that's the only reason why. And he was with 3 teams in his career, and Doug Gilmour was with 7, I think.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go. This is mine. I really thought, the player I'm taking off the list is Jonathan Toews, okay?
Whoa, come on.
Everybody, I'm sorry. Everybody.
You're not sorry. You smiled when you said it. I hope somebody took a screenshot of that.
Like Jonathan Toews, okay? I don't dislike him at all. I think he's an amazing player. He's a better player all the time. And he shows you all kinds of things he does. He is such a darling of the media. And he's a great guy, and there's no reason he wouldn't be, and it sucks to be the person who's reasonable in this, but I have to tell you that he's not. He's just not the, I don't want to diss Jonathan Toews, but Pierre Pilot, okay, who people
hello,
who I always like, yeah, sorry, who I did a lot of research on last year when we were coming up with our best number 3s of all time. What he did in the 60s was just phenomenal. I mean, this guy was literally Bobby Orr before Bobby Orr was,
Well, the thing was, he always got overlapped. Doug Harvey was the best defenseman, and to a lesser extent, Tim Horton were the best defensemen in the 60s. And then finally, when Pilot's time was there, then Bobby Orr comes in 66 and 67. So that, he was probably always the second best defenseman in the league.
And I guess he won 3 Norris trophies.
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
The other guy I'm going to take off is Patrick Kane, okay? All right. And I know Chicago fans are going to love me for this, okay? But I'm going to flat out tell you. I mean, I'm a Patrick Kane.
# Hawks hater.
Yes.
I'm not a Hawks hater. I'm just telling you that these 2 players are way – if this was done 20 years from now, 10 years after they both retired, they wouldn't be on this list, okay? This is the fact. You need guys who are on this list right now, right? But I'm telling you who's a better player in his career than Patrick Kane is Jarome Iginla. All right, and I'm just
stop.
You're gonna be safe to walk with at the draft.
I don't even know if Jarome Iginla would agree with you.
I think he would. Maybe he probably wouldn't because he's a super humble guy. But I tell you that I think that some people have made arguments on other players. I'm telling you, Patrick Kane obviously is a great. These are both great players. I just think that they are blown out of proportion a bit. Okay, I just watched the World Cup of Hockey where Patrick Kane was invisible. I just watched, and I've seen, an Olympics before that where Patrick Kane was invisible.
The entire Team USA was invisible.
Yeah, but if you're one of the best players of all time, you can't be invisible. Okay, Jonathan Toews was not invisible, so I'll give him that credit. But Patrick Kane really was in that World Cup of Hockey. Okay?
There is an argument out there, and I know the one person who's promoting it a lot, that Jonathan Toews right now or even in the past was not a top 5 player in the league, which I think is complete and utter balderdash. Because
I'm with that person.
I don't agree.
Okay, here's the funny thing. Patrick Kane is not a point-a-game player. He's more than a point-a-game player. He's got 712 points, and come on, man.
He's gotten better, and he's got.
You want to know who Jonathan Toews is? Jonathan Toews in this generation is Brian Trottier. That's who he is.
Yeah.
No.
Like I said, I would have taken Brian Trottier over Wayne Gretzky in Stratomatic.
Well, yeah, no, I think again, I just don't.
Here's the thing: Kane has won a Calder, a Hart, a Pearson. I don't know if Iginla's won a big award.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think even in this. I don't think he won a Rocket Richard.
3 goals or more for 12 straight seasons. Okay.
I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer.
An enormous amount of goals.
He's a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about that. But
a lot of those 12 seasons, people weren't scoring a lot of goals in the NHL. All right, so we're talking about like that to put 30 goals up in 12 straight seasons is insane.
Iginla has won a Pearson and a King Clancy. I forgot about the Pearson.
I just think that right now, and I'm not saying that Kane couldn't pass him. I think that the issue with this is the fact that some of these guys still have time left in their careers to go. Players who, if you're playing now, in my opinion, and you're still in your, what are they? They're not even in their 30s, Kane and Taves and Keith.
I think they're
just in their 30s if they are.
Kane's 28, 27 or 28.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of time to go, and I'm not saying that at the end of the day they won't be better, but I think what's tough on this list is is actually projecting out further. I mean, what's going to happen with these guys?
I'm the best American player of all time. That's what's probably going to happen.
Oh no.
Until he's eclipsed by Austin Matthews.
Right.
Okay, here's my last one, and it's a goaltending one. I had a problem when they did the first 33, the old time, the pre-67 ones with George Vezina. I mean, they named the trophy at him. I get it, but if you look at statistically in terms of, I mean, and we don't, the statistics early on, I guess you can throw them out, or maybe they don't carry the weight that they should have like later on. But George Hainsworth was the all-time shutout leader from the 30s until Sawchuk broke the record in the late 60s.
And he was shut out from this list. Shut
out from this list. If you want to take the modern day, I would take off Billy Smith.
Ooh.
I would take off Billy Smith. Now, Billy Smith came, raised his game in the playoffs, no doubt whatsoever. He was phenomenal in their Stanley Cup run.
Yeah.
But I like Eddie Balfour better.
All right,
I mean, Balfour, you can make an argument for Balfour for sure, but
you can.
And he's like, I think he's up there. He's in the top 3 for wins, right? He's been up there. He's 2 Vezinas. Yeah, he's got. I mean, and he won a Stanley Cup. He's got it all. Balfour has it all, but he also was such a mess for part of his career. So it's hard for me to think about. There are times in his career that he was not consistent. So there's times in his career where he really, I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I mean, people, other guys, like notable guys, I mean, that I would think about, Michel Goulet, is another guy who I thought was pretty darn good. If this had come out when the Legion of Doom line was clicking and, Leclerc had scored all those goals for all those years, 50 goals for how many years, like that kind of thing. And, this is what I'm saying is the timing of the list helps Kane and Taves in a big way.
Right, because they're in the prime of their careers, and they've won more Stanley Cups right now than I think anybody active. I don't think there's anybody who has more than 3 Stanley Cups who's playing right now.
I still go with Brimsek. I'm not even going to take out another goalie, but Brimsek won a Calder, 2 Vezinas. He was top 5 in the Hart voting 3 times.
Yep.
In his rookie season, he had 10 shutouts. He had 35 in his career. Heck of a player. His last year, he played 70 games. In 1949-50, that may have been the whole season for all I know.
And if you talk to Larry Brooks, he says Gump Worsley should be on the list too.
Right. Now, I'm not going to take out a goalie. I'm going to take out Sillaps. And I'm going to go with the NHL's own – listen, their own description of Sillaps is idolized for character and athleticism. Is that really enough to be on a list like this?
Russ, you're talking about the number 2 on the all-time Leaf list.
I understand.
Ahead of Sittler, ahead of Teeter Kennedy, just behind Keon. I think he makes that just based on that.
Okay. Well, they didn't say based on his great scoring or anything else. They said for these. So was he a feared player? What awards did Sillaps win? I have to look. I don't know.
I think he was a first.
I'm going to have to make a phone call real quick on a rumor. I'll be right back, guys.
Okay.
Let's see.
Mute yourself, Ash.
Yeah, I'm going to try to.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, it's all subjective, Russ. That's the thing. It's all subjective. We know, I'm somebody who hears me put Balfour over or Billy Smith, some Islander fan, probably, is going to come, is going to throw something at me if they ever see me. So
here's Sillaps won a Calder,
and
he won a Bing, and that's it.
He may have been a first team NHL. Remember, being named first team NHL All-Star back then was.
No, he was more than a point a game. I give him that, but I don't know.
I'm not sure. I think he won 3 or 4 cups.
Yeah, that I don't have on this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he won at least 3. So, but yeah. Well, when Ack gets back, we'll talk about some rumors here. But I what's that?
I gotta go for 1 sec. I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, folks, everybody's deserting me here. Ton of games tonight in the NHL. There's a lot of rumors going on right now regarding the Colorado Avalanche players, Duchesne and Gabriel Landeskog. There has been talk regarding the price of either one on the market. Came out that Adrian Dater and I believe it was Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun reported that the price was a first-round pick, a top prospect, and an NHL-ready defenseman or an NHL-ready player. Again, I don't think that there's a possibility that any team that is a contending team is going to give that up for Matt Duchesne or Gabriel Landeskog. It's just it's too much during the year.
It was a hailstorm. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But I was just talking about Landeskog and Duchesne. I just think that the price that's out there that's being rumored and reported now, it could be out there simply to get the price to get lower. They could be releasing that out there and saying, okay, well, that's too unreasonable. And if they really want to make a deal, then they're gonna have to adjust their price. I think what they're looking for is a they're looking for a deal that's foolproof, and they're looking to not get robbed like they did with Ryan O'Reilly. But I don't think that price. I don't think they're going to get it from anybody, Russ, that's active right now. That's during the year when those teams are contending for a player.
Yeah, there's too many teams contending. It's really going to go down to the wire. I think we're talking like really the 11th hour is when some of these things will go down. Like someone like Tampa isn't going to wait.
Shoot. 1 second, sorry.
I think Tampa sees their season slipping away, and I think they're going to be ultra aggressive to get something done sooner than anybody. But most teams are going to wait till the last possible minute.
Yeah, I do think this will be a trade line that waits till the last minute too. I agree with that.
Yeah, I was just mentioning, well, because Russ had to go offline for a second, that we don't have any video here, Rack.
Really?
That Duchesne and Landeskog, again, there we go. I don't know whether that's I continue to think that that's not going to be a deadline deal. Unless somebody steps up and gives them what they want. I think this is a deal that makes more sense at the draft.
It does, and I think that's likely. But I guess where I think it changes where I think things change is the Islanders situation is pretty dire. If they can get one of these guys, you have to look into situations where teams that really do want to make the playoffs. Tampa's one of them too. So I think it's possible that you have one of these deals on a team that really wants to make the playoffs.
Well, I think that's going to get cleared up in the next, say, 2 weeks. If the Islanders if they close in on a potential playoff spot, or if Detroit stays in the race, then they may not be sellers. And I don't know about Detroit. I don't think Holland.
I don't see how they stay in the race.
Yeah, I don't either, Russ. I mean, without they're talking about trading Mrazek. Jimmy Howard's injured. Unless Jared Careau is the second coming of
and Larkin's out, right?
Larkin was he just came back after the break, so he's back. But still, there's not a lot there, and it's been inconsistent. So if I don't see how they stay in it, but if they do stay in it, then they're probably not going to sell off as much as we think. Then guys like Vanek and Brendan Smith and Steve Ott, then they may not move those guys.
Yeah.
And with the Islanders, I mean, it's very possible that the reports that are out there that they're looking for top six forward and they have defense that they could make those moves. But if they fall out of it, then I don't see them making some major ads. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. But I think what, like you said, in the next 2 weeks are going to be the telling thing. I think it's too early to tell right now. But there's what I've noticed more than any year that I can remember is the amount of contingency stuff that's going on is really pretty intense. Like there's a lot of people talking like, okay, if we're a point out of the playoffs or in the playoffs or not in the playoffs, what are we going to do? There's a lot more of that than usual. And I think part of that has to do with also the fact that there are other trades that are being talked about, because there will be, I was flat out told there will be trades at the deadline that have to do with the expansion draft. We will see trades that have to do with that. There's no question about it.
You mentioned in your blog the Kings and Evander Kane.
Yeah, I just don't. It's funny. I mentioned it yesterday that I didn't think he was a player that would work with Daryl Sutter, and then I got a text from somebody very close to that situation who said that I was right about that. They aren't looking at Kane now. That they could eventually be looking at Kane, but right now they're just not. So,
I think what's worthy of mentioning too, because I mean nobody's bitten on Halak, but Thomas Greiss getting a 3-year extension certainly seems like he's their guy now.
Yeah, he is their guy. And you're right, that could change things quickly too, because I mean Halak. To me, if I'm a team going into the playoffs and looking for a backup, Halak might be the perfect guy because you have a guy.
St. Louis take Halak back just in case.
No, he does not like Halak. That's the issue.
Yeah, I was going to say Hitch was not a fan of Halak.
Okay.
There was Mike Heika from the Dallas Morning News had an interesting thought about their goaltending situation because obviously you've got Lettinen and you've got Niemi, and neither one of them has taken the bit and run with it. The thing that their problem is that those players both have another year left in their contract. He was theorizing that if the Stars stay relatively close, they may be in the market for a goaltender like Ryan Miller, like we mentioned before. You mentioned before, Ben Bishop, who's has been out there in rumors, even Brian Elliott or Steve Mason, to get one of those teams to take back Niemi or Lettinen to retain salary on one of those guys to make that prospect more palatable, that Dallas might have to include a draft pick or include a prospect, but that their desire to get another goaltender or a different goaltender who can actually bring them to the playoffs, that might force them to do something like that. And I mean, that may be a little far-fetched, but honestly,
I don't think it's far-fetched. It's why I partially think the Flyers are one of the best bets to do that because of the fact that because of their situation. They have 2 goalies already. So you're bringing in Niemi. It's this year and one more year. It's not so bad if you don't have any goalies under contract for next year to have Niemi.
Right.
So they have. I think I don't know that the Canucks would do it unless they got enough back, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But
I think Calgary would do it.
They might do it, yeah, because they could. I mean, the feeling is like these goalies aren't terrible goalies, these Dallas Stars goalies, and that's the other thing that you hear a lot of. Like maybe they're good goalies in different systems, like Niemi and. Yeah, it has already proven that he can be a good goalie. So we're not looking at it's just that situation in Dallas. They play a very open game and they don't play a lot of defense. So it's definitely a hard sell.
If you're Calgary and you can get Kerry Lettinen for 50% of what he's making right now, which is a little less than $3 million, for Brian Elliott, who you're going to walk away from anyway.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, it makes sense because then if you're getting Lettinen and he's not good, you're only paying him $3 million to be a bad backup or to be a high price backup for maybe John Gillies or maybe somebody else that they go for in free agency. So it doesn't hurt them down the line. It's plausible.
I can see it.
Yeah, I think that does sound like the kind of move that the Flames would make. It does, and because the Flames they're not out of it yet in their minds either. I mean, they're
no. They shouldn't feel like they are.
They've been right. They've been in the playoffs as early as like a couple weeks ago, right? So I mean, they're right back. They're right back in this thing. So maybe like I say, you get the right goalie in there, and these guys get out of Dallas and get a fresh start. When goalies can be weird that way. Goalies can get hot for the next couple months. I mean, we saw. Remember, you could have when Dubnyk was picked up by Minnesota, and anyone could have had him for months before that. It was crazy. He sat on the bench, right, for Montreal during the playoffs. He wasn't even on. He was in the press box when the Canadians had all these goalies hurt. Right. So I mean, this is this is kind of it's not. It wouldn't be a bad idea for Calgary to make that move at all. I don't think.
Now, Eck, if we could get a prog rock minute, see if you could post the picture from that set list.
Okay, let me see what you got here.
This is from a show I saw at the Palladium, 1982. Palladium was a really cool club in New York. And that was the Asia show. John Wetton passed away today at the age of 67.
Right.
King Crimson, Asia, great singer. But if you look at that stage setup, that was like crazy for the era.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And that's what I want people to see. Like Jeff Downs was literally like on a different level than everybody else, the way they built it up. And I think an elevator went up and down or some sort of contraption.
Like what you sent me doesn't have this set up on the stage.
To the right, there's a little picture. No,
I have to say it's a little disconcerting because I am a very, and I say very amateur bass player. That 3 of the heroes of my youth in the last, say, year and a half have passed away. In Chris Squire, in Greg Lake, who played bass and 12-string guitar with the ELP, and now John Wetton. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a year. I mean, for several months now, where we've seen a lot of these famous. I mean, the rock era, that was a certain period of time in the '70s. All those guys are just getting old. All I see is the. I don't see it. Sorry, Russ.
In the upper right, there's the stage. I'm going to try and get you a better shot real quick.
I just see ad set.
Here it is. I got it. Hold on.
Check it out. So
I got a better picture of it.
Okay, cool.
Because for the era, this was a stage that really was sort of revolutionary and way different than anybody else.
Is this Asia?
That's not it. Hold on.
Okay.
This is Asia we're talking about, Russ?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
While you're looking, we have 14 games in the NHL tonight. I would say probably the most.
Jack Reacher.
Of course. Video
like that last one.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay.
Technical problem. I'd say the 2 most interesting matchups are the Blue Jackets and the Rangers. Tortorella reportedly will not be behind the bench for that game.
Okay.
And probably not Capitals and the Islanders, not really. Wow. A lot of the Sharks and the Blackhawks.
Yeah,
that's a big game.
That's the big game. Yeah,
look at that stage set up.
All right, yeah. So this is that's Jeffrey Downs, right? With all the keyboards. Above the drummer?
Yes.
Wow.
Above Carl Palmer.
Yeah, that's an area. It's a Mellotron. It's funny, all these different keyboards. There's a Mellotron in the middle there, and that white keyboard that has, that's an old Mellotron, which is really neat. And there's just so many other. There's a Moog above.
John Wetton's to the right.
Yeah. This is a Fairlight. So this computer, this was the Fairlight, which they used back then. Peter Gabriel made famous Fairlights. But man,
Jeff Downs used that with the Buggles, I believe.
Yeah,
this
is a pretty daring stage setup.
This was. What's crazy about this now is this is all done on one little computer that does everything you're seeing here. But at the time that there were like how many hours did it take some stage men to set every show for them? I mean, it's just crazy. And the fact that it was just like that he was facing away from the audience.
Yes.
Pretty interesting. That just shows like the instruments there. They were the star of the show.
Yeah. And Carl Palmer not lacking in drums.
No, he's got plenty of drums as well. But oh my gosh, that the bass player and the guitar player were just laughing at this keyboard thing because there's so many things. It's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah, it's a shame, but man, that's a
heck of a setup.
Hell of a rig. Yep. I mean, I've met some people who have that kind of thing now in their studios, but that kind of stuff is so.
I mean, literally, Jeffrey Downs brought everything he owned there.
I know he probably not. You know what? Those guys own so much crap that he was probably like, "This is my small setup." They had so many. I mean, the keyboards had to be so big, and the computer. I mean, even in the '80s, which doesn't seem that long ago, like that. The computers. Remember in the '80s, computers and music were so rudimentary.
True.
Anyway, we got to go, but we'll be back again tomorrow, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a good day. We'll talk to you then. Enjoy your games tonight because almost everyone's playing.